So now we have the next event, which is the panel discussion around organizational transformation around people, processes, and policies. A very prominent topic discussed in today's pandemic era. So let me introduce the speakers for this panel discussion. So we have Biswabrata Chakravorty, the CIO of IndusInd Bank, who has more than 20 years of experience in technology, strategy, execution, and transformation roles across leading banks and assurance organizations. Welcome, Biswajit, to the panel. Next, we have Roopa Raj, VP IT VMware India. She is a seasoned business leader with experience in high performance delivery, client relationships, driving long-lasting tangible business benefits. At VMware, she is responsible for CIO functions across APJ region and also leading the cross-engineering functions globally. Welcome, Roopa, to the platform here. The next panelist is Kavita Tumuluri, VP Infrastructure Cloud Services, Blue Yonder, Head SaaS IT functions, which includes infrastructure technology, enterprise platforms, as well as project and value management office. She's a program leader, core committee member of AnidaB.org head chapter. Today, Ramkumar Narayanan, VP Technology and Managing Director at VMware India, he'll be moderating the session. Few words about Ramkumar. He leads strategy and growth for VMware's largest global center outside of its headquarters, Palo Alto, USA. He serves on the board of directors of VMware Software India. He also serves on the executive committee of NASSCOM and the governing council of the Derby Foundation, an academic incubator, board member of Sakino Healthcare. Welcome, everyone. Welcome aboard, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
morning, everyone. All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Fantastic. Good morning, Biswa. Good morning, Roopa. And good morning, Kavita. And we want to kick it off today. And, it's fantastic to have all of you here. I know each one of you is working on transforming your organizations, and who better to learn from than all of you. And I've heard so much about you individually. Of course, I know Roopa; she's a colleague of mine. But Biswa, I've heard so much about all the work that you and the team are doing at IndusInd Bank. You're kind of transforming yourself from from a bank that that is undifferentiated at one level, but kind of changing the reframing how things are going to happen. Now, before I get into the discussion, I just want to touch upon a couple of things. One is, according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, their business strategy survey, they talk about 74% of all business leaders are involved in transformation of some sort within their organization. And while everybody is working on this, and I think the last 18 months has kind of reframed what transformation actually means. What is also becoming clear is that the gap between what's the activities that have been happening and the outcomes that have need to be achieved, there is still a gap in that whole framing. Right? And digital transformation, just to kind of frame the dialogue, is really about four major areas. One is about reframing customer expectations or meeting customer expectations with new experiences, about coming up with new revenue opportunities for the organization, and be able to capitalize on the digital trends that's there in the larger ecosystem. Third is about transforming the talent strategy of the organization. And fourth is around operational efficiency of the organization, and how do you get more things done with less number of people, automation, a whole bunch of other things, which also leads to the underpinnings, which is the digital infrastructure that every organization is kind of in the midst of doing all of this. So I think, the last, again, like I said before, the last 18 months of the pandemic has kind of separated out those who were well on their way to actually achieving some of the goals that they had set themselves for, and those who weren't. And, there are a lot of case studies out there that kind of talks about this. So as we get into this discussion, what I would love to do is just do a, kind of level setting on what each of you thinks transformation really means in the context of your organization. And maybe I will start with you, Biswa, in terms of how do you look at transformation, both as a leader in the organization that at IndusInd Bank that you're leading, but also as a person who's worked in a lot of different organizations and kind of held leadership roles? Love to hear from you how you define transformation. I mean, I had one definition, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Ram, and first of all, thank you for WW Code as well as organized as a forum by VMware and for having me here. So thank you very much for that. Now, transformation is a very complex subject and much abused word. Everybody says transformation everywhere, and I think sometimes it is a little lost in in cliches. When I look back at the kind of experience I've had, and I've been fortunate to work in various companies which have been in various stages of transformation, I would say the things that strike me are first of all, transformation has to have an agenda. So I mean, a transformation for the sake of transformation is absolutely without any merit. But the agenda has to be clear. So the agenda could be repositioning the brand, could be a disruptor, to become a disruptor, to reimagine the kind of experiences that the client, that the organization reaches out to. It could be a very different business entirely because they are repositioning themselves. And there are so many examples of transformation where the organization has repositioned itself in an entirely different business line and far away from what they were earlier doing. So I think transformation to me is more about reimagining the business and reimagining how the customers engage with the business, and it has to be driven with an agenda in mind, a clear agenda in mind. If the agenda is set, then you can go about identifying where and what needs to be transformed, and of course there's a lot of science that goes in. So first of all, I think that would be the way I would look at defining I would say transformation. Now, and really, if you look at it, transformation is also very pervasive. So it is not possible to have transformation affect only a small segment of the population. So if you're looking at transformation, the entire organization is going to have, I would say, a ramification of it. There will be an impact of it. There will be a definite change in the way in which we are going to be working, right? So it's not just the customers, but it's also going to be the staff and the organization at large, right? So the second is a pervasive change. I think transformation cannot happen without a pervasive change, and it has to be inside out as much as outside in. So, you can say that outside in transformation, a lot of things, in the business side change, in the operating model changes. But if inside out, the people do not embrace that kind of a transformation agenda and philosophy, then it is not really transformation, in its true sense. So those were the 2 or 3, I would say, points, Ram, that I had in terms of what my experiences were.
No, that's great, Biswa, and we'd love to get into a little more details of of how you're going about this as we get into the dialogue. Kavita, transitioning to you, same question, right? How do you define in your organization? How do you define transformation, and how are you driving it? You're on mute, Kavita.
Sorry, am I audible now? Challenges of working from home, so yeah. So transformation for us has been actually giving the best and the delightful customer experience, right? So especially when you're in a supply chain industry, and which is dynamically changing per minute, having that edge and creating that experience that customer would want to come back and use your software or products has been the key factor for us to do transformations, right? And if I have to quote one example, I can relate very much to what Biswa said. If I have to quote one example, a few years ago we underwent this journey of SaaSification, right? SaaSification of our products, and if you're going through that journey, and if you want to traditionally move away from a very product package, you take 10 CDs to a customer site and install all your software, away from that and saying, hey, just log into this URL and here you are, we have your software up and ready, and it's subscription based in a SaaS journey. Especially in a transformation like that, it's not just the product organization or the sales organization that goes through that transformation. The entire company goes through that transformation. It has to go through that journey, and each one has a pie to carve out in that journey. So for us, all of the transformation we are going through a lot. I mean, especially for a 40-year-old company, if you have to be in the Gartner Leader Square last 10 years, you have to transform yourself. So for us, transformation is all around giving that delightful customer experience.
Thanks, Kavita. I think you said something which I think we'll come back to, but you talked about taking CDs to a customer side, and now we have a whole generation of people who are coming in saying, "What's a CD?" So I think there is also that element of generational transitional that is also starting to happen, right? When you talk about customers and all that, try showing a rotary phone to one of your kids, right, to say what is it, to see what the responses come. So, Roopa, coming over to you, Kavita touched upon SaaS transformation, and you wake up in your sleep thinking SaaS transformation. So, maybe you can help define how you think about transformation. You're on mute as well, Roopa. So that's the sixth phrase in digital transformation. You're on mute.
Yeah, you're still on mute.
I think you're on mute. Can you unmute Roopa from backstage if you can? Okay, maybe we'll come back to Roopa when we'll do that. So this was just coming back to you on this topic, right? I mean, there are 2 points here. One is, of course, you touched upon the fact that reimagining the business and reimagining the customer's experiences that we think about. 2 aspects to that I want to touch upon. One is, pre-COVID and post-COVID. How have you seen that change? For an organization like a bank, I would imagine that is very fundamental to how you kind of have to rethink the business. Love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, absolutely, Ram. The pre-COVID, post-COVID, while there's been a significant change in the entire economy and the entire, I would say the business models, etc. But at least from our perspective in the bank, in IndusInd, we were pretty focused on a digital strategy prior to the pandemic as well. So I wouldn't say that the pandemic, was a watershed moment for us. We knew that we wanted to focus on client journeys. We wanted to focus on top client journeys on the retail side, on the wholesale side, and start to improve those client experiences. That has actually been our mission. So prior to the pandemic, there were quite a few innovations that IndusInd Bank has always made, and those have been done with the clear intention that the client is center and first and center in our strategy, right? So I'll give you a couple of examples prior to pandemic, and then I'll switch to post-pandemic. So prior to the pandemic, I think one of the most noticeable examples on technology was obviously the video banking. And we had a video branch, which was one of its kind in the sense that, you really don't need to visit the branch. You don't need to actually meet face-to-face, but you're actually interacting virtually with a video agent and who's very well trained, groomed, and being able to address all the queries that you would typically have from your bank in terms of your account related transactions, or if you wanted to initiate a transaction, a change of your bank account details, etc. So when that was offered as a convenience, but I think it caught on as an innovation which sustained, and even today the video branch is a very, very I would say a powerful means for our customers and clients to reach out to us across various businesses. Now the second example I would say is not so tech, but it's very customer driven also, is the ATM transactions where we had currency of choice. We were the first bank to offer currency of choice, and in fact, if you go to an IndusInd ATM, you will see the differentiating factor in our ATM interaction menu is that we offer the denomination of choice to the clients. And many of us would realize that working in India, especially, there would be a time when you would need different currencies for different types of transactions. So it's actually something the clients really liked, and even today, it's one of our most popular, I would say, features. Right, many other banks have tried to embrace that philosophy, but we are known as the bank which pioneered that ATM, choice money. Now, pandemic basically, you could say, accelerated the client behavior towards digital. So, I mean, while we were still working on various digital strategies, the clients completely pivoted to a digital mode of working. And I think that nothing can explain it better than, the fact that, just two examples, I think we kind of went into account creation or account onboarding completely virtual, right? So while it was there prior to the pandemic, but now both for our loans and for our accounts, we have almost 80%, 70 to 80% of our total acquisition completely digital, right? And completely unassisted. So the whole idea being that clients can actually do it yourself. There isn't a need for you to interact with any human being, and the whole journey is stitched together in such a manner that ideally the client should be able to navigate very, very smoothly and be able to complete the transaction in a minimum amount of time. Right. So that's something that, and obviously that has been possible through a lot of technology innovation, right? So we've used about 40, 50 APIs, and we've built an API orchestration around these journeys so that it can be delivered to the client. So I think that's been a very big, I would say, change. And the second is payments, right? I mean, what I give you as an example of ATMs, currency transactions dipped a lot, right? After the pandemic started, people were not at all comfortable exchanging, currency notes. So what it really did for us is that the digital payment products, went through the roof. And again, from a bank perspective, we've been very clear that we will be right where the customer wants. So we have done a lot of innovations on UPI, Unified Payment, of India, which was an NPCI initiative. But I'm happy to say that we've got a lot of exciting products around UPI, which enable you to make recharges, payments, transfers, payments to merchants, payments to peers. And starting from there, we've gone to recurring payments where you can automate a part of your recurring payments, which you make, which can be kind of automated through UPI. So a lot of innovations have happened in UPI. So I think the digital payment infrastructure has been innovated in such a manner. And I just give you one example. There are many more. Obviously, as you know, we're now 24/7. I mean, all our payment systems are 24/7. Can you imagine that prior to pandemic, probably you would have thought, okay, the branch closes at 4 o'clock, what do I do? Now you can do any transaction, anytime, literally from your mobile app. And I think and whether you choose to do it on a low value transaction, a high value transaction, any time of the day to any beneficiary. And I think that's a real game changer as well, because it really doesn't limit the customer to any constraint at all. So I think banking has become more, I would say, 24/7. I just gave you a couple of these examples to demonstrate that. So that's how the pandemic has actually accelerated the client experience and journey, and how we've kind of adapted to it. I wanted to give those examples.
No, thank you, Biswa. I think this is a very powerful example. I think the public goods digital platforms in India, like UPI, while at one level it looks like as if the banks don't, have to figure out their own innovation, but that's actually a forcing function, I would think, like you explained. It actually forces you to think differently about your customer experience and about what else can be, enabled using the API infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just tell you one more example, Ram, that our Prime Minister unveiled the e-Rupee initiative just about a fortnight back, and that's where you're going to be one of the key initiatives of e-Rupee is how do I use it for carrying carrying an instrument which I can use for a service in exchange for a service. And the first service that was proposed to be launched was vaccination itself, for the vaccination of inoculation of our citizens, and how do we use prepaid vouchers and use UPI to actually have top up on those vouchers, and then actually go and use those vouchers via with the pharmacies. So pharmacies, hospital chains. So there's a very powerful range of innovations that are happening, and the whole citizen side, the client side, is really transforming as a result.
Right. No, absolutely. And we'll come back to that a little bit. Roopa, welcome back. I think, just coming back to you, couple of things, right? One is, your definition of transformation, that's what we started with. But I'd love to also hear about, how you look at the organization, the IT organizations and companies that are transforming to moving from, back-end systems now to front-end systems, right, to a large extent. It's no longer the purview of R&D or anybody else. The IT organization is as much front and center about two things, right? One is customer experiences, enabling those. The other piece is making the organization a lot more effective in terms of their own operational efficiency. If you could touch upon these, I know there's a lot in that in that question, but to demystify it for the audience, that'd be great.
Thank you, Ram. First of all, sorry about the technical glitch. I was smiling all along because I could hear Kavita and Biswa talking about it, and it was really fascinating to see so much of commonalities. Right, we are all going through the transformation, facing the similar challenge, trying to do the same things. But in terms of the IT specifically for VMware, I'm really hoping the audience is very, very familiar with what our CEO says. We want to really make SaaS as a center of our business, and I'm really hoping all of you are very familiar with the objective that we want to achieve in terms of the SaaS business transformation, right?
Right.
In order to achieve that, I really want to take a moment to talk about the IT side of things, right? First of all, and then how the IT impacts the operational efficiency, especially through the pandemic. I would say IT has taken the center stage. As our CEO says, it's not really a back office, it's not really a front office, it's all in the center now. So that's a beautiful way of putting how IT has to contribute into all these. In terms of operational efficiencies, right? I just want to touch upon quickly on the three things. One is the focus on our own employees. Focus on how are we really going to make them a lot more effective, especially in this pandemic, especially when the need arises where every one of us has to work from home, and make them effectively work from home, not just able to work remotely, and able to work very efficiently. On top
Right.
of that, thanks to our own VMware products, we have a very, very mature product on the workplace one, and because of which we were able to improve the productivity of our employees quite significantly. If I had to call out a number, it's about 30% improvement that we've been driving, just because of the way we are able to transform the IT systems internally using our own products to be able to help our employees onboard as quickly as possible, get the support that they need as quickly as possible, get the support remotely, and in most cases, zero touch. Right? So
Right.
that's the transformation that we have driven, and that directly correlates to operational efficiencies of each one of our colleagues. And without pandemic, thanks to pandemic, that way, without pandemic, this would have been an 18 months, 2 years, 3 years transformation. And with this pandemic, transformation happened overnight or within few days.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think they're accelerating. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's one. And the second one is very close to probably Kavita, more on the infrastructure side of things, right? In infrastructure is, especially when we have 30,000 employees, more than 500,000 customers, more than 30,000 partners, so the infrastructure and the business systems that we have to support to be able to, service our customers, to be able to sell our products, that sits on the IT side of things. So that's the transformation, which is very, very key and very central to all of the business transformation that we want to drive. Biswa talked about, how are we able to, how are things are changing to doing things on the mobile. So the IT is the one who needs to enable that, right? So that's the infrastructure that we are driving, especially with respect to multi-cloud strategy. There's a massive transformation that needs to happen from how are we going to, make the infrastructure ready to be multi-cloud. Then move away from the data centers and SaaSification. So you use a beautiful word. In order to be SaaSify our products, what is the infrastructure readiness that we need to provide, right? That's second one. And the third one, as I touched upon, is the business systems itself. There is a massive transformation that needs to happen, which is very, very close to my heart. That's one of my primary responsibilities, is to make the business system ready to be able to sell our products in a SaaS model and service our customers with the expectation of a SaaS, right? It is totally different in terms of the performance, the resiliency, and so on and so forth. So that's where IT comes into the picture. So if you ask me, it's a very center of driving the operational efficiency, not only for all of our employees, also for customers.
Absolutely. Thanks, Roopa. And actually, let me bring the 2 points that Biswa had made about the customer and the customer journey and all that. And then what Roopa is talking about, the backend systems now having, becoming front-end systems and, kind of becoming the heart of the transformation process. So Kavita, one of the big things that happened during the pandemic is the growth of commerce, right? To the point that Biswa was making about payments changing, people buying online, people who never have, or when, I think if I remember the numbers, e-commerce in India was 30 million, 40 million, somewhere around that number in terms of people who are buying actively. To suddenly, 18 months, it has exploded to almost 200 million people buying online, right? Completely reframed the way people do things. I would imagine that the supply chain would have been, it's a very integral part of satisfying the customers, right? In terms of what they buy, how they receive, and there's a whole bunch of value chain in between that's connected by supply chain systems. Can you talk about, how supply chains have changed and what that brings for the digital providers like Blue Yonder in terms of how you kind of, match up to the customer expectations of what's changing around you?
So before I actually do the digitization on supply chain, right, I'll touch upon the pandemic and how Blue Yonder helped across the globe, not just India or US, right? So during the pandemic, we had lockdowns, various types of lockdowns across the globe, right? I mean, Europe had different kinds of lockdowns, India, and then obviously different regions, right? Asia had different lockdowns. And so one of the key features in our supply chain platform is we kind of take account of all of that. And during COVID, we played a very key role partnering with governments so that medical supplies, key essentials like groceries, your water, reached every part of the globe. Wherever there was a need, we literally sense that need, make sure that the right warehouses closest to that warehouses could supply that demand to those particular regions, right? So we partnered with many companies to do that, and then thanks to fantastic work, support by the governments also, right? So having said that, I'll move to, in general, digitization, how it helps supply chain. One of the points I've already touched about is regional, understanding your regional demand, your regional nuances, demands of customers, making sure that you keep enough AI in your systems and say that, hey, this particular region celebrates Christmas much faster or buys Christmas stuff much faster than the other regions, and making sure your manufacturing to the last point, it happens faster in certain regions, and so keeping those nuances in mind, right, and understanding your certain retailers online retailers, whether it's online or whether it's going and picking up, because there is this trend where you order online but you go and pick up in stores. That trend is also catching up because you just want to browse. You don't have enough time to go onto the store and browse. So you browse enough on the channels, online channels, and then you go and say, hey, I'm going to come to the nearest store near me and pick up the warehouse, right? So you have to kind of keep that intelligence online, where, which warehouse, which store, which region has that stuff, and then also make sure that constantly you're mapping this to what's there on the floor. So that is one aspect. And the other aspect that supply chain digitization is helping is profiling not only your profiling your regions, but profiling users also. Mm-hmm. What are certain users buying more? And I think lot of the online retailers, online channels do that. They kind of remember and kind of remind you also, saying that, hey, it's been a month since you bought a washing powder, it's time to buy a washing powder again, right? So a lot of that intelligence, so that digitization is happening, and making sure you match the right warehouses with the right front-end individual consumers and also the retailers behind. So supply chain digitization truly helped this from manufacturing floor to your last mile, right? And then in between, you have to make sure your transport management is very efficient. You have to make sure that your warehouse management is very efficient, and bring in the right tools to keep your inventory, right? Otherwise, you have a rotting inventory in your warehouse. And especially with fresh produce, if you're not, fresh flowers or fresh produce, and we have many customers who deal with through our software, fresh produce and fresh flowers, it's all a matter of few hours where you have to map it to the right end point. Otherwise, you have a whole inventory that goes to waste, right? So,
yep. Absolutely.
So definitely digitization in that direction has helped the consumer, not only the consumer, but at the in the back end, the manufacturer and the retailer.
Everybody, the whole value chain needs to be,
Whole value chain.
cognizant of what is going on. So
Yeah.
coming back to Biswa, I have one question for you. I think this has two sides to it. It's like a two-sided piece to this question. On one end, let's take the customers. You mentioned that the customers, the services that you're offering them are differentiated. Customers are absorbing it, etc. But you need on the internal side, you mentioned that you need to look at it as a pervasive change that's both inside out and outside in. So talking about the inside out change, one thing is customer expectations changing, but the other side, you have employees who have been with the organization for a long time, who tend to have an older kind of a frame of reference when they talk about customers. How have you worked on changing both sides, right? I mean, even customers, I would imagine there are, when we look at the cohorts of customers, you have older generation of people who are still very comfortable with having their passbook updated, every few weeks to see what their bank balance looks like, very uncomfortable with using digitization. And many of our products, we have to be candid, are not designed for a wider range of audiences. I mean, we saw this across a lot of other things. So how are you thinking about even internal inside out changes to your own employees? Are you upskilling them? Are you how do you give them that new customer context and bring them along in that journey?
Yeah, great question, Ram. I think first of all, from a customer point of view, I can say that while the pandemic was in full swing, as a bank, we were responsible for meeting all the needs of the clients, right? So there would be clients who would still walk in. So we had to keep all our branches, to the extent possible, at least half of our branches and perhaps a little bit more than that, operational. Right. Of course, the staff had to be appropriately, I would say, trained and sensitized to look after their own safety and the safety of the customers who walked in. So first of all, you're absolutely right. We have to be where the customer wants us to be. And therefore, our responsibility was towards customers to make sure that we had manpower in our branches, and all the services in the branches were also being executed properly. So therefore, technologically, we had to enable people who were not in the branches, but who would probably be working from home, to be, self-aware of using those systems from home, being able to service a client request. A client has walked into the branch, but maybe there is a certain type of requirement that requires a follow-up. So I think it was made possible through a lot of commitment. And I think the key message that we always pass to all our frontline teams is, look, we are not going to be here to compromise anybody's safety. So I think the staff safety was the number one priority, right? We were never going to take any chances on that. So whether it was the distancing, whether it was the rostering, whether it was the hygiene elements, whether it was the sanitization elements, whether it was taking appropriate vaccinations. So all these efforts were made to keep our employees and staff completely, aware of their safety related, I would say, protocols and principles that the company was following, and therefore that gave them a sense of assurance that, look, safety is first in the time of pandemic. Right. So therefore, that translated into a very, very conscious behavior towards clients, because we also took their safety into consideration. So we would, for instance, have queues manned appropriately. We would have temperature checks. We would have the sanitization performed at regular places in the branch. So essentially what I'm saying is that, first of all, we looked at educating, we looked at preparing our staff for these kind of contingency situations by working from home. And thirdly, making sure that they were consciously looking after their own safety and that of the client. So I think that was the one big thing that we had to do to pull us in the pandemic, because we were essential services. We had to be open. We could not shut our services, right? Because banking is very, very much an essential service. So that is one. Now, in terms of skill development, I think it's been a very interesting journey, because many a times, we relate to technology. Earlier we used to relate to technology as a very black box driven exercise, but now it's very engaging. It's very interactive. So I'll give you some examples of how we are engaging with our staff. So we are launching a range of, so almost all applications are now available to work from home. So this is the first thing, right? So you may be at home, but you will be still able to access all the necessary functions that you were performing if you were in office, right? So that means that a lot of appification had to happen. We had to take apps out of these applications, convert these into SDKs, roll them out, secure them using MDM. We used AirWatch MDM of VMware. So we kind of used all of those in a concerted strategy, so that what happened is that we were able to provide to our employees, look, you're working from home, you're safe, but you're also productive. So productivity was very, very important. And the moment you give apps to the employees which are designed with the right UI UX, with the right security, it's a much simpler work environment to function in. You don't have education sessions which are very complicated, so because these are very intuitive to use, right? So that's one part that we took care of, right? Security was not something left to the staff. We took care of it from a central perspective by securing these apps, by making sure that we had two-factor authentication, right? So those kind of things ensured that the staff could not actually, by mistake, intentionally or unintentionally, create an issue when it came to accessing the data. So those are some of the things that we did. And now what's happening is that we are launching a lot of in-house technologies to educate staff and use those technologies. For example, chatbots, right? So more than client being using chatbots, we find that the internal teams of the bank can use chatbots to a large extent, because when they are dealing with customers who are walking in, who are calling in, just imagine the range of questions that they have in their mind. And the chatbots have been trained to actually look at all these scenarios, all the decision trees, and then give us the kind of an output. So tools like that are also helping prepare the employees for a digital generation, so that their resistance is very less. They understand that it complements their job. It doesn't take away their job. It doesn't really cause a performance impairment. It causes a performance productivity improvement. So that's the way we are looking at positioning this in front of the employees. And we've also made a lot of changes from an employee experience perspective to make them use the best technology stacks. So whether it's looking at the cloud-based email solutions, or whether you're looking at VPN, or you're looking at the BYOD. So all of these things have been kind of constructed very carefully, so that employees get the best experience wherever they are, wherever they are globally, right? So that's the model that we are following here, Ram. And but of course, as an IT professional, I can say that beyond all of this, the IT guys have to be really, really upskilled, because a lot of technologies are changing very rapidly. So my development teams, my application support teams, they need to embark upon new technologies and all. And if we get a chance, we'll speak about that. But overall, that's the strategy that we are following.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Biswa. I think very comprehensive and very clear in terms of how you are. In fact, I would presuppose that bringing in new technology becomes less of a challenge, because it becomes naturally part of the way they work and the way they kind of adopt technology, which makes it easier than saying, look, I'm going to bring automation, AI, ML, which then people look at it as a threat to their own jobs and security in that sense. So very, very great, powerful examples. Kavita, coming over to you, right? Touching upon AI and ML, I mean, there's so much happening. There's a lot of buzz around it. A lot has been talked, and there's a lot that has happened. But as we look ahead, right, all the examples that you were giving earlier are great examples of that. As a leader in the organization, there is always resistance. I mean, we have not done things, especially older organizations. It's like this is not invented here. We didn't do this way for all these organizations. How do you talk about, as a leader in the organization, how are you bringing about changes in the mindset of people? The same kind of question, Biswa, but slightly different in the context of your organization as well.
Correct. So being a product organization, right, it's you always have this one set of people, hey, we have always done business like this, or this has been traditionally been successful, we had good customers, why do we need to transform right now? So for us, the way we adopted how to do those kind of changes, or I would still bucket them as transformations, right? Transformation and thought process, people and culture. Do it top down, right? Get your leaders, your CEOs, your exec team to come in and talk about that vision. Draw the new company goals of how, if we were to do more in the AI ML space, more using automation, how we can effectively kind of change our personal lives, I should say, even our careers at work, into something different, right? How we can move with the moving trend. So we took a very top-down approach, and we are going through that transformation, a couple of those transformation, not only the SaaS journey, but the automation journey across the company. We are also going through a DevOps journey across the company, and these are journeys that you can't just say that, hey, few people form a task force and yeah, we are going to implement DevOps, right? You have to take the whole company behind you, rally the company behind you, create those change champions at each level and in each group, horizontally and vertically, and get them to articulate the what is in it for you, right? I mean, the minute you articulate to each one of everyone what is in it for you, right? And then you also have to bring in your top performers, not only your top performers, but the next layer of performers to act as your catalyst, and then give them the right training such that they could be the first on the boat for this transformation journey, right? And you also have to bring in a new mix of leaders from outside, SMEs from outside, who can then handhold you and take you on this journey. So while we are doing this, while we are going through, even when we went through the SaaS journey, that's what we did. We kind of SaaSified all of us through a lot of talent training, through internal training and then external training. We partnered with vendors to give us external training. And then we also brought in the right mixture of leaders who have done it before and SMEs who have done it before, and then club them, and they become the catalyst, and your organization catapults into the journey at a much faster pace. So that kind of combination of finding the right combination, you have to know the pulse of your company, the pulse of your teams, and how fast you want to move in that journey, right? Some journeys we are like, hey, this doesn't have a direct customer impact, so that could be a second priority in the company. So journeys like the SaaS journey or SaaS transformation is like the top priority because it directly impacts the customer, and there is something in the customer also have to change. So you have to kind of find the equation within your company that works for you. And being a product company, there is always a very slow lethargy in some business units, and you have to find out where you have that slow lethargy and kind of concentrate with your leadership on those areas. So our current automation journey is that you also have to bring in the right tools if you have to move yourself much faster. Bringing in the right tools and training people on the right tools, you kind of nail it faster. So that has been our experience.
Thank you. Roopa, coming to you, and not just drawing upon your VMware role and experience, but also kind of looking back in your career, right? And bringing it to today's times. The future of work, there's a lot of discussion happening on future of work. I mean, since I know you well enough, you joined VMware in the middle of the pandemic. So you haven't been to the office, you have not even seen, you've not met your colleagues, in person, and yet you're leading a large transformation exercise in the company globally, right? Now, what advice do you have for people? I mean, you are in the middle of this, you are experiencing it yourself. But I have two questions, and I'll go around because I think it's a relevant question for everybody here. The future of work, and if you go past the the title, it's really about touching upon all the pieces that all of you have talked about. The world has changed, and I last year I started calling it a tear in the space-time fabric, because even if you put it back together, it's never going to come back to what it used to be, right? Things have changed. So Roopa, how are you thinking about this, both for yourself as you look ahead, as well as for your organization and going through this transformation, of how to both embrace it, as well as what to watch out for as we look ahead?
Yeah. I mean, great thing, probably again close to my heart because of my personal experience that I'm going through.
Yeah, exactly.
One is just preaching and then theoretically saying we should do this, and the other thing is to experience personally the pains, right? Which I've done both over the last few months. One is the transformation is happening around that as well, right? As you rightly indicated in the previous question. Adopting to newer technology, that is a lot more easier as compared to some of the softer aspects, right? But adopting to a different culture is very hard. Adopting to different mindset is very hard. And doing that consistently across all of our employees and bringing them onto the same journey as Kavita was indicating, that's even more hardest. And it's easier to do it in a smaller group. It's easier to pick few and make them as a change evangelist, so on and so forth. But driving that across is one of the hardest things. So ways of working is also going to transform. Some we plan, some it's inevitable. We have to adopt. And one such change is this future of work, right? We never really planned for this kind of a culture to come in, this kind of a ways of working, and more than anything, we never anticipated this will become the norm in the future. First we thought this is just a pandemic. Once the pandemic gets over, we will go back to our original ways of working. Now everything is going to change, and that's the transformation that we have to really go through, right? As I said, it's a forced one, it's an inevitable one, and whether we want it or not, it's going to happen. Right, so instead of the resisting, it's better to adopt and then see what is that we need to do in order to kind of make this journey smooth for ourselves. Right, so my own personal experience, it's been an extremely different experience for me. I've been in this career for about 20 years or so. But this is the first time I had to get onboarded remotely, and I have a really huge team across various geographies, and I haven't met any of them in my last 4 months, right? And then sitting on the IT side of things, I'm also responsible for all of our employees to be productive, and then just balancing all that to me, working remotely without even seeing the office, without even seeing any of my peer group, my teams, etc., is a completely different experience, and it's not easy. Let's accept that, and it's really not easy. Every day I wish I could have one office visit, one face-to-face time, one travel. I don't know how much I wish for it, but it's not going to happen, right? So that's my personal experience, but I have made up my mind. It is all in our mindset. That is why that having that mindset is very, very important. Let's accept it. Let's embrace on this change, and we have to make use of the technology that's available, right? Again, sitting on the IT side, I can keep talking about this on and on and on. Biswa, for example, talked about chatbot. The chatbot, conversation AI, so on and so forth is going to become norm, right? So similarly, the ways of working, we have to really make use of the technologies that we have, collaboration tools, make the most of it. Be on the video as much as possible, that at least we get to that, closer to that face-to-face experience. And some of the things, smaller things like this, right? One of the biggest change is it's easier to meet people. It's easier to build a relationship over a coffee and so on and so forth. That's the biggest change, so that's hard. That has to be a deliberate attempt now to talk to people and then set up calls and then maybe have a virtual coffee and so on and so forth. That's not going to happen naturally. These are some of the smaller things, but makes a big impact.
Totally. And I think we'll do a quick 2-minute round. I think we're running out of time. Biswa, coming back to you, right? If knowing what you know now, having gone through this with your organization and other organizations in the past, if somebody was starting a transformation journey, what would your advice be to them? What to watch out for? And what would be your advice?
Yeah, I think it's always, in hindsight, a lot of learnings can be passed on. I think be clear about what your priorities are. Have a clear strategy in place. I think if your strategy is clear, your priorities are clear, then you execute to that. Whatever be the scenario, a pandemic scenario, a normal scenario, whatever it is. And in fact, as Roopa was saying, this is the new scenario, so it's not going to really change much. So this is the environment, this is the baseline. So you accept it and you build your strategy around it. And have clear priorities. I think training and upskilling is very important. And I think it is nothing to do with technology alone. It's also to do with behaviors and mindsets. I think that also we discussed. Things like multitasking, things like being, having etiquette on calls, which are video calls, being able to really introduce oneself and build bridges virtually. These are very tough, I think very, very tough ones to crack, and we need to kind of skill people with those kind of skill sets, and most important thing is that I think prepare for an adversity. I mean, when you're looking at a client behavior can change, so study the patterns, understand what is in it that you could do which can differentiate and can sustain just putting something out there as a fad is not going to help, because after some time somebody else is going to copy it. So you need to be very clear about your priorities, and you need to be clear about what is the value that you're offering and how sustainably it can be delivered. So these are some of the lessons learned that I would say in hindsight.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Biswa. That's really insightful. Kavita, over to you. Same question.
Yeah, so in our experience, especially in the journeys that we have gone through, even keeping your customers in closely working with your customers on your transformation journey, right? That also helps because a lot of times we are so inward focused that we only look at, hey, this is our journey, my company journey, hey, my team's journey. So we are so inward focused. So making your customer also a partner through your journey, it definitely helps. Especially take your top loudest customers or top 3-tier customers, right? We definitely did that, and it helped us shape that goal together of what customer delight that we wanted to create. And in this journey, right, internally creating strong change champions definitely helps. We had strong change champions, and especially during this pandemic, trust was a huge factor when we started off. There was this trust factor that, hey, the West region is always used to, or they can work from home. They are used to working from home. And Asia and India, these regions, we are not used to working from home. Probably our productivity will drop. We have to redo some of the priorities. All of that thought process came in, but work through the pandemic, working through the right tools, empowering your teams with the right tools. That trust factor is also that has become zero now. So we are able to prove to ourselves and to the globe that we are able to work with the same or higher productivity, right? So creating that trust in the ecosystem and bringing in the right tools, of course, these are all the mantra for having an effective transformation.
Great, thank you. Roopa, same question.
Awesome. Just to add, I think both of them covered very, very good points, right? Just to add, I would just want to start by saying change is hard. Let's accept it, right? Change is hard for any one of us. But the organizations are making the change, and we are going through the transformation. And any change, any transformation is in the best interest of our people, our products, and our customers, period, right? As long as we understand the purpose, then the change becomes very exciting. But if you don't connect to the purpose, it becomes very draining. So my 2 cents is, make an attempt to understand the purpose and be the change drivers. Otherwise, it is going to be a very, very difficult wait on the talent transformation side personally for oneself, and to meet that business goal as efficiently as possible. It is going to be very, very stressful. So we have to make this very purposeful and very deliberate, and get energized, and then meet the goal in as efficiently as we can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think it's been a great discussion. I think we covered a lot of ground in the hour that we had. I think we can even go longer than this. And I want to thank each one of you, for your fantastic examples. And really, I'm hoping that the audience really took away a lot from this discussion, because we covered a lot. We talked about customers, we talked about employees, we talked about change, we talked about purpose, and then, how the world is shifting, whether it be in banking, whether it be in the entire, retail and, supply chain management, or in terms of how future of work is actually going to affect all of us, individually and collectively as we look ahead. Again, I want to thank all of you on behalf of Women Who Code for taking the time and joining us today. I look forward to connecting with each of you separately as well. I know, this is as you can see, I really resonate on this topic very much. And I'm really looking forward to connecting with each of you to understand more about what's going on. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the leaders, for sharing their great insights into the transformation journey on people, mainly around employees, customers, processes, around experiences and policies. Time flew by in a jiffy. This is one of the imperative pillars for any organization to succeed in career. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for spending some time here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kavita. Thanks, Roopa. Thanks. Thanks to our audience here. So now we have a 15 minutes break, post which there will be multiple interesting sessions lined up. So just grab a cup of tea and coffee and come back soon. We'll be waiting here for you for much more entertainment. Thank you.